I want to tell you something that I have never said out loud to anyone. Not to my neighbors. Not to the women I used to have coffee with on Saturday mornings. Not even to the one friend who called me every single week for 30 years. I have never said it because saying it means admitting that the thing you were most proud of in your entire life, the one thing you gave everything to build, was also the thing that nearly destroyed you. My daughter's name is the first word I said every morning for 43 years. And for 14 months, she let strangers bathe me, feed me, and lock the doors at 9 p.m., while she sat in my house, slept in my bed, and deposited checks with my name on them into an account I couldn't access. She didn't do it out of nowhere. She planned it. Carefully. Quietly. With paperwork and patience and a smile that I raised her to have. And I, her mother, never saw it coming. Not until I was already inside those walls. But here is what she forgot, in all her careful planning. She forgot that I raised myself first. Before I was her mother, I was a woman who had survived things that would have ended most people. And that woman, the one who existed before the school lunches and the soccer games and the college tuition, that woman never actually left. She was just waiting. So yes, my daughter put me in a care facility and sold the house I owned for 31 years. And yes, I smiled and nodded and let her think she had one. Because I needed her to believe that. Completely. Stay with me. Because what happened next is the part nobody expected, including her. My name is Patricia. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your business and nobody has very much, but everyone manages. My mother worked at a laundry. My father drove a delivery truck. We were not poor exactly, but we were always one bad month away from it, and I knew that feeling in my body from the time I was about 7 years old. That feeling, that low hum of financial uncertainty, is what pushed me. I worked through high school, waitressed through 2 years of community college, transferred, finished my degree in accounting at 24, got hired at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, and spent the next 15 years being the most reliable person in every room I walked into. I married a good man named Walter when I was 28. He was a high school history teacher. Gentle. Funny. The kind of man who remembered every birthday and never raised his voice. We bought our house in 1987, a 4-bedroom colonial on a quiet street with oak trees in the front yard, and we built our life inside it 1 year at a time. Our daughter Brianna was born the following year. She was wanted. She was loved. She was, and I say this not as a brag but as a fact, given every single thing we could give her. Private tutoring when she struggled in math. A car at 17. College paid in full, not loans, not halfway, fully paid. A down payment on her first apartment when she graduated. Walter and I didn't take vacations those years. We drove older cars. We didn't renovate the kitchen even when it needed it. We gave it to Brianna instead. Walter passed 11 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden, no warning, here one morning and gone by afternoon. I won't spend too long on that because even now it sits in my chest in a way that doesn't have words. What I will tell you is that after Walter died, it was Brianna who held me together. She called every day. She came on weekends. She sat with me in that kitchen and drank tea and talked about her father and made me feel like I was not completely alone in the world. For 3 years after Walter died, my daughter was the best version of herself. And then she met Raymond. Raymond was 41 when Brianna brought him home for Thanksgiving. She was 39. He was pleasant enough on the surface. Good-looking in a groomed, deliberate way. Confident handshake. Knew the right things to say about the food and the house and the neighborhood. But there was something underneath it that I noticed immediately and could not name. He asked too many questions that weren't quite personal but weren't quite casual either. How long had I owned the house? Whether I still worked. What my plans were, his word plans, for the future. I answered everything politely and watched him the way I used to watch new clients at the firm, with a smile and both eyes fully open. Brianna was different around him. Not happier exactly. More performing. Like she was being evaluated and wanted to score well. They married 8 months later. Small ceremony. Raymond's idea, Brianna said. He preferred intimate gatherings. Within a year, the calls from Brianna became less frequent. The weekend visit stopped. When I did speak with her, she sounded distracted. Measured. Like she was choosing her words before she said them. Then one Sunday she called and said something that stopped me cold. She said, "Mom, Raymond and I have been talking. We're worried about you. Living alone in that big house. It doesn't seem safe or practical anymore." I was 67 years old. I was healthy. I drove myself everywhere. I cooked my own meals and managed my own finances and walked 2 miles every morning. I said, "I'm perfectly fine, Brianna. I appreciate the concern." She said, "We just want what's best for you." I had heard that sentence before. In my career, in negotiations, in difficult meetings. It always meant someone wanted something. It started slowly, the way these things always do. First it was suggestions. Had I thought about a smaller place? A senior community? Somewhere with people my own age and activities and support if I ever needed it? Then it became concern. Brianna started mentioning things. Had I left the stove on last week? Had I forgotten about the dentist appointment? Small things, framed carefully, repeated often. I had not left the stove on. I had not forgotten the appointment. But I noticed what was happening. She was building a narrative. Quietly. Brick by brick. I want to be honest with you. There were moments I questioned myself. That is what sustained, repeated suggestion does to a person. Even a sharp person. Even someone who has spent decades in rooms full of people trying to reframe reality. You start to wonder, am I forgetting more than I realize? Am I managing as well as I think I am? I made an appointment with my doctor. Full checkup. Cognitive screening. Everything. I was, in my physician's words, remarkably healthy for your age and frankly for any age. I kept that report. I made 3 copies. Then Brianna and Raymond came to the house together on a Saturday morning in April. They brought coffee and pastries and sat across from me at my own kitchen table with the kind of careful warmth that I now recognized as rehearsed. Raymond did most of the talking. He had found a place, he said. A residential care community about 40 minutes away. Beautiful facility. Activities. Meals prepared. Medical staff on site. They had already toured it. For me. Without me. I looked at my daughter across that table, and I searched her face for the woman who used to sit in this same kitchen and cry about her father. She didn't quite meet my eyes. I said, "I'm not ready for that, Brianna. I don't need that level of care." Raymond said, "It's not about need, Patricia. It's about quality of life." I said, "My quality of life is fine." Brianna said, "Mom, we've already put down a deposit." The room went very quiet. I looked at my daughter. She looked at the table. And I understood, fully finally, without any remaining doubt, that this conversation was not about my well-being. It was about my house. I did not fight them that day. I know that might be hard to understand. But I had spent enough years in financial work to know that when someone has already made a move, arguing in the moment rarely changes anything. It just puts you on the defensive while they maintain the advantage. So I told them I would think about it. I made more coffee. I asked Raymond about his work. I walked them to the door with a hug for Brianna that she returned a half-second too late. Then I called my attorney. Her name was Sandra, a woman I had worked with years earlier on Walter's estate. Sharp, thorough, not easily impressed by anything. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I respected most about her. When I finished, she said, "Patricia, I want you to do something before we talk about next steps. I want you to pull your property records, check whether anything has been filed recently, and look at your accounts carefully, all of them." I did it that same afternoon. What I found made me sit very still for a long time. A power of attorney document had been drafted, not yet filed, but drafted, with my name on it and Brianna listed as my legal decision-maker. I had not signed it, but it existed. Somewhere someone had prepared it. I also found that Raymond had a background that had not come up in family conversation. A previous marriage. A property dispute in that marriage that had been settled through legal pressure. A pattern, documented in court records that were publicly accessible, of financial maneuvering around older or more vulnerable family members. Not criminal. Carefully not criminal. But a pattern. Sandra confirmed what I already suspected. The care facility was step 1. Once I was there, once the routine was established and I was perceived as dependent, the power of attorney would follow. And once that was signed, Either by me under pressure or through other legal mechanisms, the house would be next. 31 years of mortgage payments. Walter's savings. My retirement carefully managed for 2 decades. All of it sitting in a 4-bedroom colonial with oak trees out front. And my daughter and her husband had a plan for every bit of it. This is the part that surprises people most. I agreed to go. Sandra and I discussed it at length. Fighting openly, refusing, making demands, threatening legal action immediately would have taken months and been emotionally devastating and ultimately might not have stopped them. They had resources. Raymond was not careless. But if I went willingly, if I appeared cooperative and perhaps even a little confused and grateful, I bought time. And time was what Sandra needed. So I packed 2 bags. I let Brianna drive me. I smiled at the staff when I arrived and said the room was lovely. And then, from inside that facility, with a phone they didn't think to take, a laptop in my bag, and Sandra working on the outside, I went to work. Every document they filed, Sandra tracked. Every move Raymond made financially, we documented. I kept a written record of every visit, every conversation, every request Brianna made, dates, exact words, who was present. I was not confused. I was not declining. I was a former accountant with 30 years of experience reading financial documents, and I was taking notes. 6 weeks after I moved in, Brianna arrived with papers. She said they were for my comfort and security. That it was just a formality. That Raymond had a friend who was a notary, and they could do it right there in my room. I read every line of that power of attorney document very carefully. Then I looked up at my daughter and I said, I'd like Sandra to review this before I sign anything. You remember, Sandra? Brianna's expression shifted in a way she couldn't fully control. She said Sandra wasn't necessary, that this was a family matter. I said, everything that affects my assets is a matter for my attorney. That hasn't changed. She left without the signature. She called that evening and her voice was different, tighter, less warm. She said I was being difficult, that I didn't trust her, that after everything she had done for me, this was hurtful. I said, I love you, Brianna. Good night. And I called Sandra. Sandra had not been idle. While I was inside that facility keeping careful records, she had been building a case that was clean, documented, and airtight. Raymond's previous property dispute had involved a woman in her 70s, his former mother-in-law, who had signed documents she later claimed she did not fully understand. That case had settled quietly. But the records existed and Sandra had obtained them through proper legal channels. Sandra also worked with a financial forensic specialist who reviewed the activity and accounts connected to Raymond and Brianna over the past 18 months. What they found was that Raymond had taken out a loan using projected inheritance as informal collateral, not legal, not formalized, but documented in emails that had been subpoenaed. He had already spent money he did not yet have. Money he expected to have once the house was his. Sandra filed a formal legal objection to any power of attorney transfer. She also filed documentation with the appropriate state oversight office regarding the pattern of behavior, not as a criminal complaint but as a protective legal measure that created an official record. Then she did something I had suggested and she had agreed was the right moment. She contacted Brianna directly. Not with threats. Not with accusations. With a letter. Formal, precise, and detailed. It outlined what we knew. What we had documented. What Raymond's financial history showed. And it made one thing very clear. Any attempt to transfer, encumber, or access Patricia's property or finances would be met with immediate and fully prepared legal response. The letter also included, and this was Sandra's idea, not mine, and I will always be grateful for it, a private note to Brianna separate from the legal language. It said simply, your mother loves you. She has always loved you. She is asking you one more time to choose her. I don't know exactly what happened in their house the night Brianna received that letter. What I know is that 3 days later, Brianna arrived at the facility alone. No Raymond. She sat across from me in that small room and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She said, Mom, I need to tell you some things. What came out over the next 2 hours was not a simple story. Brianna had known, not everything, but enough. She had known that Raymond's interest in my house was not purely concern for my well-being. She had told herself it was fine, that it was practical, that I would be comfortable and cared for, and the house was just sitting there and they needed the stability. She had told herself a lot of things. But hearing it laid out in Sandra's letter, seeing Raymond's previous history, understanding what the pattern actually looked like from the outside, something had shifted. She also told me something about Raymond that I had not known. In the weeks since I had refused to sign the power of attorney, he had become someone she didn't fully recognize, pressuring her, dismissing her concerns, telling her I was manipulating her, that Sandra was manipulating her, that she needed to focus on what was practical. She said, "Mom, I think I've been making excuses for him for a long time. I did not say I told you so. I did not say I saw this from the beginning." I reached across and put my hand over hers and I said, "Tell me what you need." She cried in a way I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. The kind of crying that has been held in too long and comes out bigger than expected. I sat with her through all of it. Because that is what mothers do. Even after everything. Even when we probably shouldn't. I went home 3 weeks later. My house. My oak trees. My kitchen where I made coffee the same way I had made it for 31 years. Raymond did not contest what followed because contesting it would have required explaining things he had no clean explanation for. He and Brianna separated 4 months after that afternoon in my room. The divorce was finalized the following year. The loan Raymond had taken against anticipated inheritance was his problem entirely. It had never been legally connected to my assets, and Sandra made certain that remained perfectly clear. Brianna moved into a small apartment 20 minutes from my house. She called me the morning she signed the lease. She said, "Is it okay if I come for coffee on Sunday?" I said, "I'll have it ready at 10. We're not the same as we were. I want to be honest about that. There is a scar in this relationship that Sunday coffees and honest conversations are slowly healing. But it is still there. Trust is not a light switch. You cannot flip it back on with one good afternoon. But we are trying. And trying, I have learned, is not nothing. It is actually everything. The house is still mine. The accounts are still mine. The oak trees out front lost 2 branches in a storm last fall, and I have not yet decided whether to trim them or let them grow the way they want to. I think I'll let them grow. I have thought a lot about what I would say if someone asked me what the lesson was. And honestly, I don't think there is one clean lesson. Life is not that tidy. But here is what I know. The most dangerous thing you can do to a woman who has spent her life being steady and quiet and reliable is assume that she has nothing left. Steady people are not empty people. They are loaded people. They have been filling up for decades, with experience, with patience, with the knowledge of exactly how things work and exactly what to do when they stop working. I was not rescued. No one swooped in. What saved me was 30 years of paying attention, one good attorney, and the decision to stay calm when every part of me wanted to fall apart. And my daughter, I want to say this carefully, my daughter was not a villain. She was a woman who made choices out of fear and pressure and a need to belong to someone, and those choices caused real damage. But she came back. And I have to believe, that people can come back. The question I want to leave with you today is this. Is there someone in your life right now who is being slowly convinced that they have no options, and do they know that you see them? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone is just that. I see you. And you are not as alone as they want you to believe. Thank you for spending this time with me today. This is Velyra Payback, and we will see you in the next one.